The abduction. The galaxy was holding its breath. On the neutral planet of Andarian Prime, a grand diplomatic summit was underway between humanity and the Zoltran Alliance. The meeting was meant to solidify peace in a galaxy long fractured by war. Humanity's delegation, led by Admiral Victor Kane, was accompanied by key officials, and his daughter, Sarah Kane, a rising xenobiologist whose work had won the respect of alien and human scientists alike. In the sprawling crystalline halls of the summit, Sarah wandered slightly away from the meeting. She had always been curious and bold, fascinated by alien architecture and culture. As she admired the holographic displays of Andarian's history, a shadow moved behind her. It happened fast. A sharp burst of energy crackled in the air, followed by muffled screams. Sarah turned, but it was too late. A group of alien mercenaries in sleek black armor surrounded her, weapons drawn. One of them, a towering reptilian creature, snarled something unintelligible before slapping a metallic restraint onto her arm. "Identify yourself," Sarah demanded, her voice steadied despite the danger. The lead mercenary leaned in, its beady eyes gleaming. "You don't need to know our names, human. But your father will." Before Sarah could react, a sharp pain shot through her neck. Her vision blurred as a tranquilizer took effect, and the world around her faded into darkness. Admiral Kane was in the middle of a tense negotiation when the summit alarms blared. Red lights bathed the room, and a robotic voice announced, "Security breach in Sector 5. "Sarah," Kane muttered, his expression darkening. He shot up from his seat and stormed out of the room, his hand instinctively reaching for the plasma pistol at his side. "Admiral Kane," called one of the human delegates. "We need you here. This could be an attack on the entire summit." Kane's voice was ice cold. "Then you better handle it. My daughter's out there." As Kane sprinted down the gleaming corridors, he received updates through his earpiece. "Admiral, unidentified ships just left orbit. Sensors indicate they've taken hostages." "Hostages?" he barked, though he already knew the answer. "Yes, sir. Among them, Sarah Kane." The Admiral's fist clenched. His mind raced through the possibilities. This wasn't a random attack. It was targeted, calculated. Someone wanted to provoke him, but they had no idea what they were dealing with. "Track them," Kane ordered. "I want every satellite, every scout, every damn sensor pointed at those ships." "Sir," the voice on the other end hesitated, "they've cloaked. We've lost their trajectory." Kane stopped dead in his tracks. Cloaking technology, advanced enough to evade human systems, meant one thing. The Zoltran Alliance was involved. Hours later, aboard his warship Relentless, Kane sat in the dimly lit command room, surrounded by holographic projections of star maps and intercepted data streams. His cybernetic eye scanned the information faster than any human could, but the results were the same, nothing. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ship's systems. Kane's crew exchanged nervous glances. They had all heard the stories. When someone crossed Admiral Kane, they didn't live to tell the tale. Suddenly, a soft beep broke the tension. One of the technicians turned to Kane, her voice trembling with excitement. "Admiral, we've picked up a signal. It's faint, but it's her." Kane rose to his feet, his towering presence dominating the room. "Put it through." A small holographic display materialized, showing a blinking dot on a star map. Sarah had activated a hidden tracking beacon, something Kane had insisted she wear for safety during her travels. "She's alive," he said, his voice low but filled with determination. "And she's telling us where to find her." The Relentless roared to life, its engines blazing as it broke free of Andarian Prime's orbit. Kane stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "Admiral," his second-in-command spoke, "this could be a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Kane replied, his tone cold and resolute. But they've made one fatal mistake. What's that, sir? They took my daughter. The crew braced themselves as the ship jumped into hyperspace, following the faint signal. Behind them, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Nobody crossed Admiral Kane and lived to regret it. And the Zoltran Alliance was about to learn that the hard way. The chase begins. The Relentless tore through hyperspace, its engines burning at maximum capacity. On the bridge, Admiral Kane stood like a stone statue, his eyes fixed on the star map where the faint signal from Sarah's beacon blinked intermittently. Every few moments, the signal would vanish, obscured by interference from the mercenaries' cloaking technology, but it always reappeared. Sarah was alive, and fighting to stay that way. The crew worked tirelessly, analyzing every piece of data the beacon transmitted. Lieutenant Calder, Kane's second-in-command, approached cautiously. "Sir, we've triangulated the signal," Calder reported. "It's leading us toward the Orion Expanse, a region filled with uncharted debris fields and asteroid clusters." Kane nodded, his voice calm but steely. "The perfect place for someone to hide. And the perfect place for us to flush them out." As the Relentless exited hyperspace, the Orion Expanse stretched before them, a chaotic sea of shattered rock and abandoned shipwrecks. The crew adjusted their instruments, scanning the debris field for any sign of the kidnappers. "Sir, we've got movement," Calder said, pointing to the main display. A faint energy signature flickered in the distance, weaving through the debris. "Looks like a ship, but it's trying to mask its presence." Kane's jaw tightened. "That's them. Helm, pursue." The Relentless surged forward, its advanced navigation systems allowing it to maneuver effortlessly through the treacherous field. But as they closed in, a sudden barrage of laser fire erupted from hidden turrets embedded in the asteroids. "Ambush!" Calder shouted. The ship shuddered under the impact, and alarms blared across the bridge. Kane remained unfazed. "Shields up. Return fire," he barked. The Relentless unleashed a volley of plasma blasts, obliterating the hidden turrets one by one. Explosions lit up the asteroid field like fireworks, but the mercenaries' ship used the distraction to gain distance. "They're slipping away," Calder warned. "Not for long," Kane replied. "Launch the recon drones. I want their exact trajectory." Minutes later, the drones transmitted their findings. The enemy ship had entered a dense cluster of asteroids, too dangerous for a large vessel like the Relentless to follow directly. "They're trying to lose us in the field," Calder said. Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. "Then we'll outthink them. Plot an alternate course around the cluster. Anticipate their exit point." The crew worked quickly, feeding data into the ship's navigational systems. The Relentless veered off its current path, taking a wide arc around the asteroid cluster. Meanwhile, the mercenaries, believing they had evaded their pursuers, slowed their pace. On board the enemy ship, Sarah Kane was far from helpless. Though restrained in a small cell, she had already assessed her surroundings. Using the skills her father had drilled into her since childhood, she quietly disassembled a loose panel on the wall, exposing the wires behind it. She worked quickly, splicing the wires together to send out a secondary distress signal. "Dad," she muttered under her breath, "you better not take too long." Back on the Relentless, the secondary signal flashed across the screen. "She's boosting the beacon," Calder said, a mix of admiration and relief in his voice. "She's giving us a clear location." Kane's eyes flicked to the map. The mercenaries were heading toward a massive asteroid that rotated slowly, its surface riddled with caverns and crevices. "That's their hideout," Kane said. "Prep the strike team. We're going in." The Relentless approached the asteroid cautiously, staying just outside sensor range. Kane led the assault team himself, suiting up in lightweight combat armor. His crew begged him to stay on the ship, but his decision was final. "If you think I'm letting someone else bring my daughter home," he said, loading his plasma rifle, "you don't know me." The team boarded a stealth shuttle and launched toward the asteroid, weaving through its craggy surface to avoid detection. Inside the shuttle, the tension was palpable. Kane remained silent, his focus unshakable. As they neared the landing point, Calder, who had insisted on accompanying the team, glanced at Kane. "Sir, what if it's a trap?" Kane's voice was ice-cold. "Then we spring it. And make them regret it." The shuttle touched down in a shadowy cavern, its engines whisper quiet. Kane and his team disembarked, weapons drawn. The air inside the cavern was thick and metallic, the flickering glow of alien lights illuminating the path ahead. "Move fast, move quiet," Kane ordered. "We're not leaving without her." The team advanced deeper into the asteroid, encountering resistance almost immediately. Alien guards armed with advanced weaponry opened fire, but Kane's team was relentless, taking them down with precision and efficiency. Despite the firefight, Kane's mind remained fixed on one goal: reaching Sarah. Finally, they reached a large chamber where Sarah's signal was strongest. The doors were heavily reinforced, but Kane's demolitions expert planted charges to blow them open. As the countdown ticked down, Kane's grip on his rifle tightened. When the doors blasted open, the room was empty, except for Sarah. She was restrained in the center of the room, surrounded by a faint energy shield. Her face lit up when she saw her father, but before either could speak, a voice echoed through the chamber. Well, the voice said. "Admiral Kane. Right on time." Kane's eyes narrowed as an alien figure stepped out of the shadows, flanked by heavily armed guards. It was Commander Dranox, a Zoltran warlord with a reputation for cruelty. "You've walked into our trap," Dranox sneered. "Surrender now, or watch her die." Kane's lips curled into a cold, dangerous smile. "You don't know who you're dealing with." As the standoff began, the Relentless prepared to strike from above, and Sarah worked discreetly to disable her restraints. The battle for her freedom was about to begin. The chamber was silent, save for the low hum of the energy shields surrounding Sarah. Admiral Kane's piercing gaze locked onto Commander Dranox, his grip firm on his plasma rifle. The Zoltran warlord stood tall, exuding confidence, his scaled armor shimmering under the alien light. Kane's team held their positions, each soldier tense, ready for the signal to attack. Dranox's sharp, guttural laughter echoed through the room. "I must admit, Admiral, your reputation precedes you. But even the great Victor Kane isn't invincible. You walked straight into my trap." Kane remained calm, his voice cold as steel. "If you think this ends with me surrendering, you don't know me at all." He shifted his stance slightly, his cybernetic eye scanning for weak points in the shield around Sarah. From the corner of his vision, he caught the subtle movement of her hands. She was working on something. Dranox stepped closer to Sarah, gesturing to his guards. "Lower your weapons, Kane. A single command from me, and she's gone." His claws hovered dangerously close to the control panel for the shield. Kane's team exchanged nervous glances, but the Admiral didn't waver. "You think I'm afraid of you?" Kane said, his voice laced with quiet fury. "I've faced entire fleets and walked out alive. What makes you think you'll be any different?" Dranox snarled, his confidence flickering for just a moment. "Bravado won't save her. Or you. This entire asteroid is rigged to explode if you don't comply." Kane tilted his head slightly, as if considering the threat. Then he smiled, a cold, predatory expression that sent a ripple of unease through the room. "Exploding the asteroid with you still on it? Bold move. Not a very smart one." As Kane spoke, Sarah continued to work on the small device she had concealed in her palm, a disruptor she had fashioned from the scraps inside her cell. Her father's voice, calm but commanding, filled her with resolve. The device sparked softly, signaling it was ready. She waited for the right moment. Kane shifted his weight, raising his rifle slightly. "You're not as clever as you think, Dranox. I've already got my ship targeting this facility. One signal from me, and this entire place becomes dust." Dranox faltered, glancing nervously at the ceiling. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Kane replied, his voice a low growl. "You've heard the stories. You know what I'm capable of." Before Dranox could respond, Sarah acted. The disruptor in her hand activated, sending a pulse through the energy shield surrounding her. Sparks erupted as the shield fizzled out, and Sarah sprang to her feet, delivering a sharp kick to the nearest guard. The room erupted into chaos. Kane and his team seized the moment. Plasma fire filled the chamber as the soldiers engaged Dranox's guards. Kane moved with deadly precision, taking down enemies with every shot, his focus unwavering as he advanced toward his daughter. Sarah fought alongside him, using her captor's confusion to her advantage. The two moved as if they were a single unit, their bond forged through years of training and trust. Dranox roared in frustration, drawing a massive blade from his side. He charged at Kane, his strikes heavy and relentless. Kane parried with his rifle, the weapon reinforced for close combat. Sparks flew as the two clashed, their movements a blur of raw power and skill. "You've underestimated humanity," Kane snarled, blocking another strike. "And that's the last mistake you'll ever make." With a sudden, calculated move, Kane disarmed Dranox, sending the alien's blade clattering across the floor. Dranox staggered back, his confidence shattered, but before Kane could deliver the final blow, an alarm blared through the chamber. A robotic voice announced, "Self-destruct sequence activated. Detonation in 5 minutes." Dranox smirked through his labored breaths. "If I can't win, neither will you." Kane's team quickly regrouped, forming a defensive perimeter as more guards poured into the room. "Sarah, get to the shuttle," Kane ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. But Sarah hesitated. "Dad, we can't leave them to get away with this," she shouted, pointing to the control terminal at the far side of the chamber. Kane glanced at the terminal, then at the rapidly ticking timer on the wall. He made a split-second decision. "Calder, take the team and get her out of here. I'll handle the terminal." "Sir, with all due respect, that's suicide," Calder protested, but Kane shot him a look that brooked no argument. "Go!" Kane barked. Calder grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Dad," she yelled, but he didn't turn. His focus was on the terminal, and on the faint chance that he could stop the countdown. As the team retreated, Kane approached the terminal, his fingers flying across the alien interface. The system was complex, the language unfamiliar, but his cybernetic implants translated just enough to give him a chance. Dranox, wounded but still alive, watched from the corner of the room. "You can't stop it," Dranox hissed. "This asteroid will be your tomb." Kane didn't reply. His fingers danced over the controls, overriding layers of encryption. The timer ticked down, 2 minutes, then 1. Sweat beaded on his brow, but he didn't falter. Finally, with only seconds remaining, the countdown froze. Kane exhaled sharply as the system powered down. He turned to Dranox, who stared at him with a mixture of hatred and awe. "You just don't know when to quit," Dranox spat. Kane raised his plasma rifle, aiming directly at the Zoltran warlord. "No. I don't." A single shot rang out, and Dranox slumped to the floor. Kane didn't waste a second. He sprinted toward the exit, his comm crackling to life. "Calder, status." "We're at the shuttle, sir. Engines are hot." "Where are you?" "On my way," Kane replied, dodging falling debris as the asteroid began to crumble. He reached the shuttle just as the last of his team hauled Sarah aboard. The shuttle launched, rocketing out of the cavern and into open space. Behind them, the asteroid erupted in a fiery explosion, sending shockwaves through the debris field. On board the Relentless, cheers erupted as the shuttle docked safely. As Kane stepped onto the bridge, Sarah threw her arms around him. "I knew you'd come for me," she whispered. Kane hugged her tightly, his voice soft for the first time that day. "Always." But as the crew celebrated their escape, Kane's expression darkened. "This isn't over," he said, staring out at the stars. "The Zoltran Alliance just declared war." The Relentless floated in the shadow of a nearby moon, a temporary refuge after their daring escape. On the bridge, the mood was tense despite the success of their mission. Admiral Kane stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, staring intently at the holographic display of the galaxy map. Around him, his crew worked tirelessly, analyzing the data they had collected during the raid. Sarah entered the bridge, her face still flushed from the intensity of their escape. She approached her father, her expression a mixture of frustration and concern. "You know this won't end here," she said. "The Zoltran won't stop until they've made an example of us." Kane nodded, his expression grim. "I know. And that's exactly why we're going to strike first." The room fell silent as the crew exchanged uncertain glances. Lieutenant Calder finally spoke up. "Sir, with all due respect, we're running on limited resources, and the crew is already stretched thin. A direct confrontation with the Zoltran Alliance could be suicide." Kane turned to Calder, his gaze steely. "I'm not talking about a full-scale assault. We need to hit them where it hurts, cripple their ability to wage war before they even get the chance." He gestured to the holographic map, zooming in on a region marked with Zoltran insignias. "This is one of their primary shipyards. Intelligence suggests they're using it to construct a fleet designed specifically to counter our forces. If we take it out, we buy ourselves time and weaken their offensive capabilities." Sarah studied the map, her mind racing. "You're talking about sabotage." "Exactly," Kane said. "But it won't be easy. The shipyard is heavily fortified, and it's deep within Zoltran-controlled space. We'll need to move fast and strike hard." The plan was bold, reckless even, but the crew knew better than to doubt their admiral. Preparations began immediately. Engineers worked around the clock to repair the Relentless and ensure it was battle-ready. Sarah joined the planning sessions, her knowledge of alien technology proving invaluable as they devised ways to bypass the shipyard's defenses. As the ship prepared for its next mission, Kane took a rare moment to speak with Sarah alone in the observation deck. The stars outside glimmered like distant embers, a stark contrast to the fire burning within him. "You don't have to come with us," he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "You've been through enough already." Sarah frowned, crossing her arms. "You know I'm not sitting this out, Dad. I can help, and you need all the help you can get." Kane allowed himself a small smile. "You've got my stubbornness, that's for sure." Their moment was interrupted by Calder's voice over the intercom. "Admiral, we're ready to move." Kane gave Sarah a final nod before they headed to the bridge. The Relentless jumped to hyperspace, its destination set for the heart of enemy territory. As they neared the shipyard, the crew reviewed their plan one final time. Sarah and a small team would infiltrate the facility, planting explosive charges on critical systems while the Relentless provided cover from a distance. It was a high-risk operation, but it was their best shot at disrupting the Zoltran's war machine. When the ship dropped out of hyperspace, the shipyard loomed before them, a massive structure bristling with weaponry and surrounded by patrol ships. The Relentless immediately engaged its cloaking systems, slipping through the outer defenses undetected. Sarah and her team boarded a stealth shuttle and launched toward the shipyard. Inside the shuttle, the tension was palpable. Sarah reviewed the schematics one last time, her mind focused on the task ahead. She could feel the weight of her father's expectations, but she was determined not to let him down. As the shuttle docked at a maintenance port, Sarah led her team into the shipyard. The corridors were dimly lit, the air heavy with the hum of machinery. They moved quickly and silently, avoiding patrols as they planted charges on key systems, the power core, the communications array, and the shipyard's fuel reserves. Back on the Relentless, Kane monitored their progress, his jaw tight with tension. The ship remained hidden, but the longer they stayed, the greater the risk of detection. "Admiral," Calder said, his voice urgent. "We've got incoming patrols. They're sweeping the area." Kane's cybernetic eye flickered as he assessed the situation. "Hold position. Don't engage unless we're compromised." Inside the shipyard, Sarah and her team finished planting the last of the charges. As they prepared to exfiltrate, an alarm blared through the facility. Their presence had been detected. "Move!" Sarah shouted, leading her team toward the shuttle. Guards swarmed the corridors, and a fierce firefight broke out. Plasma bolts ricocheted off the walls as Sarah and her team fought their way to the docking bay. The Relentless decloaked, its weapons blazing as it engaged the enemy ships swarming around the shipyard. Explosions lit up the void as the crew fought to keep the shuttle's escape route clear. On board the shuttle, Sarah's team suffered casualties, but they pushed forward with unwavering determination. As they reached the docking bay, Sarah turned back, covering her team as they boarded. A plasma bolt grazed her arm, but she gritted her teeth and kept firing. The shuttle launched just as the charges detonated. The shipyard erupted in a chain of fiery explosions, its massive structure collapsing in on itself. The shockwave rocked the shuttle as it sped toward the Relentless, which immediately jumped to hyperspace once the shuttle was safely aboard. In the aftermath, the crew of the Relentless celebrated their victory, but Kane's mind was already on the next move. The Zoltran Alliance would retaliate, and he needed to stay one step ahead. Sarah sat beside him in the briefing room, her arm bandaged but her resolve unshaken. "We've dealt them a blow," she said. "But this isn't over." Kane nodded, his gaze fixed on the star map. "No, it's not. But they just learned the hard way that humanity doesn't back down." The destruction of the Zoltran shipyard sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of Admiral Kane's daring strike spread like wildfire, and while humanity celebrated the victory, the Zoltran Alliance seethed with rage. On board the Relentless, the crew prepared for what they knew would be an inevitable retaliation. Kane, however, was already planning their next move. In the dimly lit strategy room, Kane, Sarah, Calder, and the senior officers gathered to assess the fallout. Holographic displays filled the room, showing intercepted transmissions from the Zoltran High Command. Calder leaned forward, studying the data. "They've mobilized their fleets," Calder said grimly. "They're reinforcing key systems and rallying allies. Whatever we did back there struck a nerve." Kane nodded. "It's not just about the shipyard. We've shaken their confidence. They thought they could intimidate us, but now they're scrambling." Sarah folded her arms, her gaze fixed on the map. "If they're pulling their forces together, they're preparing for something big. A counterstrike, maybe even an all-out invasion." Kane turned to her, a glint of approval in his eyes. "Exactly. And that's where we have the advantage. They're consolidating, which means their supply lines will be vulnerable. We'll hit them where they least expect it." The plan was ambitious. Using intelligence gathered during their infiltration, the Relentless would target a series of supply depots critical to the Zoltran fleet's operations. It would be a series of precise, coordinated strikes designed to cripple their logistics and delay their offensive. The crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the mission. Weapons were calibrated, battle plans finalized, and the ship systems fine-tuned for the grueling campaign ahead. Sarah spent hours in the engineering bay, working with the tech teams to develop new countermeasures for Zoltran technology. She was determined to do her part, refusing to let the enemy's overwhelming numbers intimidate her. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, Kane addressed the crew over the intercom. His voice, calm and resolute, carried through every corridor of the Relentless. "Everyone on board knows what's at stake," he began. "The Zoltran Alliance believes they can break us, but they've underestimated the strength of humanity, and the strength of this crew. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've always come out stronger. Stay sharp, trust each other, and remember, this fight isn't just for us. It's for every soul back on Earth counting on us to keep them safe." The crew responded with a resounding cheer, their spirits bolstered by his words. The first target was a remote outpost hidden within a dense nebula. The Zoltran relied on it to store fuel for their warships, and its destruction would create chaos in their supply chain. The Relentless emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the nebula, its stealth systems engaged. As the ship approached the outpost, the crew braced for action. Sarah joined the infiltration team, determined to see the mission through. She and the team used a modified shuttle to slip past the outpost's defenses, landing in a concealed docking bay. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of machinery and the acrid smell of fuel. The team moved quickly, planting charges on critical systems while avoiding patrols. Sarah's expertise in alien technology proved invaluable, allowing them to bypass security systems with ease. But as they neared the final objective, an alarm blared through the facility. "We've been made," one of the soldiers shouted. Zoltran guards poured into the corridors, their weapons blazing. Sarah and the team returned fire, fighting their way toward the exit. The sound of plasma bolts and explosions filled the air as the team pushed forward. Sarah's heart pounded, but she stayed focused, her training taking over. Back on the Relentless, Kane monitored the situation, his jaw tight with tension. "Deploy covering fire," he ordered. "Give them a clear path out." The ship's weapons roared to life, targeting the outpost's defenses and drawing fire away from the team. Inside, Sarah and the others reached the shuttle, boarding just as the charges detonated. The explosion ripped through the facility, sending a massive fireball into the nebula. The shuttle docked with the Relentless, and the crew erupted in cheers as the mission's success was confirmed. But there was no time to celebrate. Kane immediately ordered the ship to jump to their next target. The following days were a blur of relentless action. The Relentless struck depot after depot, each mission more dangerous than the last. The crew grew weary, but their determination never faltered. Sarah became a key member of the infiltration teams, her resourcefulness earning the respect of even the most battle-hardened soldiers. As the Zoltran fleet scrambled to respond, the Relentless always stayed one step ahead. Kane's strategic brilliance and the crew's unwavering resolve turned what should have been a desperate fight into a series of stunning victories. But the strain of the campaign began to show. Casualties mounted, and supplies ran low. In a quiet moment in the mess hall, Sarah sat with her father, exhaustion etched into both their faces. "How long can we keep this up?" she asked softly. Kane looked at her, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "As long as we have to. They're hurting, Sarah. Every strike we make forces them to rethink their plans. We're buying time, for humanity and for everyone else who refuses to bow to the Zoltran." Sarah nodded, finding strength in his words. "Then let's make it count." As the Relentless prepared for its next mission, the crew knew they were reaching the tipping point. The Zoltran alliance was on the defensive, but the final confrontation was drawing near. The stakes had never been higher, and the battle ahead would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Relentless drifted silently in the void, its engines idle as the crew prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. The Zoltran alliance, battered and humiliated by weeks of relentless strikes, had retreated to their central command station, a massive fortress stationed near a volatile star. This was their stronghold, their last bastion of power, and the linchpin of their war effort. Admiral Kane knew that if they could take it out, the Zoltran fleet would collapse into chaos. On the bridge, Kane addressed his officers and crew. His voice was calm, his words deliberate. This is it. The heart of their operation. Their command station is where they're coordinating the fleets, rallying their forces, and planning their retaliation. Destroy it, and we cripple them. But make no mistake, this won't be like the other missions. They'll throw everything they've got to protect it. The crew listened intently, their expressions a mixture of determination and apprehension. Sarah stood beside her father, her gaze unwavering. She'd been through too much to let fear cloud her resolve. Kane continued, the station is heavily fortified, with advanced shields and defensive systems. We can't take it head-on. Instead, we'll infiltrate, disable their defenses from within, and deliver the killing blow. This is an all-or-nothing mission. Failure isn't an option. The room fell silent as his words sank in. Then Calder stepped forward. We've followed you this far, sir. We're not stopping now. A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Kane nodded, pride swelling in his chest. Good. Let's get to work. The plan was intricate and risky. While the Relentless engaged the station's perimeter defenses to draw fire, a small team led by Kane and Sarah would infiltrate the station, plant charges on its main reactor, and disable its shields. Timing was everything. If the team failed to take down the shields, the Relentless wouldn't survive the counterattack. As the ship approached the Zoltran stronghold, the sheer scale of the enemy station became clear. It was a behemoth of steel and energy, bristling with weapons and surrounded by a fleet of warships. The Relentless cloaked and slipped into position, its crew holding their breath as they moved through the enemy's defensive perimeter. The assault began with a sudden, ferocious attack. The Relentless decloaked, unleashing a barrage of firepower on the nearest enemy ships. The Zoltran fleet scrambled to respond, their warships surging toward the human vessel. On board the Relentless, the crew worked furiously, evading enemy fire and striking back with calculated precision. Meanwhile, the infiltration team launched from a stealth shuttle, slipping into the station through a maintenance port. Kane led the way, his movements precise and methodical. Sarah was right behind him, her heart pounding as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The team encountered resistance almost immediately, engaging in fierce firefights as they pushed toward the reactor. The station was a fortress, every corner guarded by Zoltran soldiers. The air was thick with the sound of plasma fire and the acrid smell of burning metal. Sarah fought with a focus born of necessity, her training and instincts keeping her alive. Kane, despite his years of experience, was a whirlwind of destruction, his cybernetic enhancements giving him an edge in the chaos. As they reached the reactor chamber, the team planted charges on the massive, pulsating core. The room glowed with an eerie blue light, casting long shadows across their faces. Kane activated the timer on the explosives, his voice sharp as he addressed the team. We've got 10 minutes to get to the shield controls and disable them. Move. They sprinted through the station, their path marked by desperation and determination. The shield control room was heavily guarded, and the team launched into their fiercest battle yet. Sarah fought side by side with her father, her movements mirroring his as they cut through the enemy ranks. With seconds to spare, they breached the control room. Kane and Sarah worked quickly, overriding the Zoltran systems and deactivating the shields. As the protective barrier around the station collapsed, a triumphant cheer erupted from the Relentless. Shields are down. Calder's voice crackled over the comms. We're moving in for the kill. The Relentless surged forward, its weapons targeting the station's vulnerable core. Explosions rippled through the massive structure as the ship's firepower tore it apart. The infiltration team raced toward their shuttle, the station collapsing around them. They barely made it out. The shuttle rocketed away from the crumbling station, weaving through the chaos of the battle. On board the Relentless, the crew watched as the enemy stronghold erupted in a blinding explosion, the force of the blast shaking their ship even from a distance. Cheers filled the bridge as the realization sank in. They had done it. The Zoltran command station was no more, and the enemy fleet was in disarray. In the aftermath, Kane and Sarah stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the debris field left behind. The stars beyond seemed brighter, as if the galaxy itself was breathing a sigh of relief. "We bought humanity time," Sarah said, her voice soft. "But for how long?" Kane placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression somber but resolute. "Long enough to make sure they think twice before crossing us again." The Relentless turned toward home, battered but unbroken. The fight wasn't over, but for now, humanity had won a hard-fought victory. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy in stunned silence. The destruction of the Zoltran command station was a resounding blow, a clear message to anyone who dared challenge humanity's resolve. The Relentless limped through hyperspace, its hull scorched and systems strained, but its crew held their heads high. Victory had come at a cost, but they had achieved the impossible. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the vastness of space. Around him, the crew worked tirelessly to repair the ship's damaged systems. The air was heavy with exhaustion, but also with a sense of triumph. Sarah approached her father, her expression a mix of pride and concern. "You should rest," she said softly. "You've been on your feet for hours." Kane shook his head, his voice steady. "Not yet. There's still work to do." Sarah sighed, but she knew better than to argue. Instead, she joined him at the console, reviewing the data from the battle. The Zoltran fleet was scattered, their forces disorganized and leaderless. For the first time in weeks, humanity had the upper hand. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Then, Calder stepped forward, holding a datapad. "Admiral, we've received a transmission. It's from the Galactic Council." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Put it through." A holographic projection flickered to life, revealing the Council's representative, a tall, stoic alien with a crystalline form. Its voice resonated with a deep, melodic tone. "Admiral Kane, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our acknowledgement of your victory. The Zoltran alliance has been weakened, and their aggression toward humanity has been halted, for now." Kane's expression remained unreadable. "For now isn't good enough. They'll regroup, and when they do, we'll be ready." The council member inclined its head. "Your actions have shown the galaxy the strength and resilience of your people. The council will convene to discuss measures to prevent further conflict, but we must caution against escalating tensions." Kane's lips pressed into a thin line. "Escalating tensions? They kidnapped my daughter, attacked my crew, and threatened my planet. If you want peace, start by holding them accountable." The council representative hesitated before responding. "Your point is noted, Admiral. We will monitor the situation closely." The transmission ended, and the hologram faded. Calder turned to Kane. "Do you think they'll actually do anything?" Kane shook his head. "The Council's always been more talk than action. If we want lasting peace, we'll have to make it ourselves." Sarah leaned against the console, her arms crossed. "So, what now?" Kane's eyes softened as he looked at her. "Now, we rebuild. We've shown the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far. But it's not just about surviving the next battle. It's about ensuring there's something worth fighting for." The Relentless returned to Earth, greeted as heroes. Crowds gathered to celebrate their victory, but Kane and his crew were already preparing for the next challenge. Repairs began immediately, and new recruits arrived, inspired by the crew's bravery. The ship became a symbol of humanity's resilience, a beacon of hope in a galaxy still fraught with danger. In the weeks that followed, Sarah found herself reflecting on everything they had endured. She had grown in ways she never expected, facing challenges that tested her courage and ingenuity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she joined her father on the observation deck. "You think they'll come back?" she asked, breaking the silence. Kane nodded slowly. "They will. But next time, we'll be even stronger." Sarah smiled faintly. "You're always so sure of that." Kane turned to her, his expression softening. "Because I have to be. For you, for the crew, for everyone depending on us." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey settling over them. Then Kane placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've done more than I ever could have asked, Sarah. You're stronger than I ever imagined." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with determination. "I learned from the best." The galaxy, though scarred by conflict, began to shift. Humanity's victory sparked a new wave of diplomacy and alliances, as other species sought to understand and align with the force that had defied the odds. But deep in the shadows, remnants of the Zoltran alliance plotted their revenge, determined to reclaim their power. For Kane, Sarah, and the crew of the Relentless, their mission was far from over. The stars called to them, a vast and unpredictable frontier that held both danger and opportunity. And as long as there were threats to humanity, they would answer that call. The journey wasn't just about fighting battles. It was about carving out a place in the galaxy where humanity could thrive, where future generations could live without fear. They had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, resilient, relentless, and unwilling to bow to anyone. As the Relentless prepared for its next mission, Kane's voice echoed through the ship's intercom, steady and resolute. "We've shown them who we are. Now, let's show them what we stand for." And so, with engines roaring and hearts steadfast, the Relentless embarked on its next journey into the stars. Because in the vastness of space, the story of humanity was far from over.